Welcome to episode 40 of the IT Fundamentals Training Series. I am your host, Mark Haupt, and today we're going to have version 2, episode 2, however you want to call it, part 2 of managing your operating system. Let's get rolling. Welcome to the IT Fundamentals Training Series. This is your host, Mark Haupt. Welcome to episode 40, another Big 10 here once we get done with this one. Today is part 2 of operating system management. Today we're going to start with page 222 and 223 is where we're going to look at. And we're going to look at service management. Now, services on the computer is a very small software package that I'll add additional features to the computer is what the book says. But really, let's boil it down to what it really is. All right, so you have your hardware and you have your software, your operating system. And what you need is you need a function that will allow the operating system to talk to different pieces of the hardware and different functions with the application. So remember, we talked about how the drivers interact between the operating system and the hardware itself. Well, if we need something in reverse of that, that's where we're talking about services. So this is where the link exists between the operating system itself and the applications that are installed on there. And lots of times, applications require multiple services in order to operate. And many times, those need to be started at the point of boot up in order for the application to properly run. So that's in essence what a software is. It's a service is. It's a very small piece of an overall large application product that when installed onto the operating system allows for the interaction of the two. Now, what we call that is handling of a service. So for example, the book uses the example of printing requests. So if you have an HP printer and you have the computer and the operating system, you're going to have a driver that interacts between the hardware device and the computer and the operating system. And more than likely, what's going to happen at that point is your printer will just work. But there are software features inside of that printer and above and beyond the driver that you want to take advantage of. So, for example, you want to be able to print duplex, or you want to be able to print in color versus black and white, or black and white instead of color. Perhaps you want to be able to look into the printer and look at the different settings that are inside of there for Wi-Fi, or how much ink is left inside the printer, and so on and so forth. So your application is installed on there, and in order for that application to actually run an interface between the computer and the application, you need to have these services. So one of the most common services that you're going to find with a printer is a print spooler. Now, what the print spooler does when it's operating properly is all those settings that you make inside of the application are applied inside of the spooler. All the changes are made. So for example, if you want to do duplex printing on one particular print, but single page printing on another, as you hit print on that print, that duplex printing item, you've made all those changes. All of that application change code goes into the print spooler. Then the print spooler hands it off to the printer. The printer takes those instructions and then does what it's supposed to do. And then the next print that you do will either revert back to its normal operating function of a single page per print instead of a duplex, which is front and back type of scenario. Things along those lines. That's how a print spooler works, and that's what it's talking about inside of here. So you're able to send commands, if you will, from the application through the operating system to the hardware. And if you really want to see a kind of a diagram of how that works, you have the application who executes the service or the print spooler, who talks to the operating system. The operating system then speaks to the hardware through the driver. The functions that are assigned through the print spooler are transferred to the printer. The printer then runs some functions on the printer in order to configure the printer the way that the print job inside of the spooler has been defined to operate in. And then finally, the printer functions and actually prints that out. That's a mouthful, but that's how a a service operates within the operating system itself. All right. So Figure 4.30 shows the services tab. Now, from time to time, in operating an operating system and managing it properly, you may have to get into the services and determine why a service is running or not running. You might be in Task Manager and see that a particular application is running amok and taking uh, all of your RAM or all of your CPU, something along those lines. And you want to kind of dive in on what part of that application is causing the problem. You're going to want to look at services under Task Manager. Now, you'll notice that on that services tab, first of all, on the left-hand side, it will list all the service. And you'll notice that how many of them are kind of defined by the application they're using. So you've got the Adobe ARM service on there. And under the description, it actually says Adobe Acrobat Update Service. So what this is doing is it's going out to Adobe. It's looking for any updates that's necessary for the Adobe Acrobat product, making sure that it's constantly updated. And you'll notice the status there is that it's running. So it's doing that constantly. And, probably every few hours, it's going out there for a check. Now, if your Adobe Acrobat product is running amok, you might want to change that status of that service from running to stop. And what you would do is you would select that service, right click on it, and then it will give you options on there to stop, run, basically place on hold, things like that. Now, here's the thing about the services, though, that once you reboot your computer, so if you go in there and you stop a whole bunch of services or even turn them on, when you reboot your computer, it will return to its original state as was configured, unless you right click on the service and you tell it in one of the function options not to start on boot. So that's an important piece as you're doing troubleshooting on the computer. If one of these applications is kind of running crazy and you're having some problems, that's one of the ways I troubleshoot is I'll go in and I will stop all of the services that are associated with that application, set them so that they do not start on boot, and then I'll reboot my computer and see what kind of performance I get on the backside of that. So that's how you deal with service management inside of the operating system management pieces. All right, so that's our lesson for today. What I would recommend you do is go to that Task Manager, pop open the services, and even kind of play around and take a look at some of the services that are running on your computer so you're familiar with them. There's some on here that even on Figure 4.30 that are perhaps not familiar with. So there's one like Audio Serve. That's for Windows Audio. In other words, the way that I'm communicating with you right now is through that Audio Serve function, through Windows Audio piece. Zoom ties into that Windows Audio piece, and the services operate effectively between the Windows Audio service and Zoom in order for me to record this message for you. There's also some strange ones on there. You'll see this thing called Bonjour service. You might go, hey, I don't really want that running. Well, that's associated with some of the Apple product and some of the Apple functions, Bonjour. It's very possible that you don't, but if you've got iTunes on your computer, you might need that on there. And then you'll see some other strange ones on there like CDP service. And then all it says is connected device platform. On that kind of thing is you're probably looking at some enhanced drivers that are inside of your Windows operating system. What you can do is you can go and look up, you take that service name, like CDP SVC, and type that into Google, and it will show you what it is and whether you need it or not. Now, the other thing that this is useful for in looking at the services tab on Task Manager is if you might have a virus or malware on your computer, if you see something running in there, it says like, encrypt $ all data, you probably have some sort of a ransomware type of thing running on there, and you can actually shut that down inside of there for perhaps prevent some other problems in the future. So we've used this for security purposes, for troubleshooting purposes. These kinds of things are utilized quite frequently. So go take a look at your services tab on the Task Manager. Get familiar with it, especially if you're going to be in IT fundamentals, if you're going into IT, learning new things and getting into IT itself. This is something you definitely need to take a look at. All right. So if there's nothing there on services, then if there is, give me a holler. We could talk about it a little bit, but other than that, that's it for services today. Tomorrow, we'll talk a little bit about actually dealing with device management and how to get new devices installed, like Bluetooth drivers and so on and so forth. So, end of episode 40. Appreciate your time. Again, feel free to reach out to me. MHOUPT@commonsensesecurity.net is my email address. Reach out to me if you have any questions. I've had a couple of people reach out who are taking some of the practice exams and running into a couple of problems here or there or need further explanation, and I've been able to help them out. So keep sending that information in, and we'll continue to assist you where we can. But for now, episode 40 is in the books. Talk to you later.